Hi poetry lovers, welcome to my channel Bella Poetry. My name is Bella and I love beautiful poetry. In this segment of our second series, The Best Love Poetry and the Poets That Penned It, we will discuss interesting and also troublesome life of another Victorian poet, Christina Rossetti. Christina Rossetti was born in 1830 in London. Her father, Gabriele Rossetti, was Italian expatriate who came to England and married a woman by the name of Frances Polidori. Frances Polidori was half Italian, half British, extremely religious woman, very well educated. Their house was always filled with people, the refugees, Italian refugees, writers, poets, artists. So it was very interesting and exciting environment in their home. Together they had 4 children. Christina Rossetti had 1 sister and 2 brothers. One brother was serious, calm. His name was William. He was actually the sole supporter at one time or another of the whole family. He was also a scholar and he worked as an excise officer in the government. And the second brother, Dante Gabriele Rossetti, was an artist and a poet. Always broke, never had enough money. And we talked about Dante Rossetti when we discussed Elizabeth Siddal in our first series about the Victorian female poets of the 19th century. Elizabeth Siddal, was actually a lifelong partner and at the end, the wife of Dante Rossetti. So Christina Rossetti grew up in a very happy home, intellectually rich. She was exposed to literature, to sciences, to languages. All of the children were absolutely fluent in both English and Italian. They were homeschooled by their mother, Frances Polidori. So everything went well until 1840, when Christina Rossetti turned 10. Her father became sick, he started losing his sight, and he was diagnosed with tuberculosis. He stayed at home. Christina had to take care of him. When she was young, Christina was a very wild child. Her father actually called her and her brother Dante 2 wilds, and then he called her sister Maria and the brother William 2 calms, because they had totally different personality. But with age, Christina learned how to control herself and she became extremely reserved and even shy, especially socially. When the father got sick in 1840, the mother, Frances Polidori, and her daughter Maria had to work outside the house as governesses, and so Christina had to take care of her dad. And remember, she was very young. And after a couple of years, she became really sick. She had a mental breakdown, and from this time on, suffered from different ailments and depression and severe social anxiety. She was religious as well, just as her mother, but she didn't like to go outside a lot. So when she went to church, she would go or the first or last, just to sit in the front and not to be seen by other people. And she would always leave the last or the first to avoid socializing. So obviously, just like Emily Dickinson, Christina Rossetti isolated, she was reclusive, and she had social anxiety in my mind. So the reason why she had a nervous breakdown is kind of questionable, but historians said that maybe the relationship between her father, Gabriele Rossetti, who was sick at home and couldn't work, and Christina were not that normal, that they were laced with incest. And that could have caused her depression and melancholy and various ailments. So, but in spite of everything, the Rossetti children were always exposed to discussions about politics, literature, and art, and they were avid, voracious readers and writers. Christina Rossetti was never married. She spent her whole life with her mother. She received 3 marriage proposals, and all 3 of them she rejected. The first proposal she received from the artist James Collinson, then she received a marriage proposal from the linguist Charles Cayley and the painter John Brad. But she felt that their religious upbringing was different from hers, and she decided to reject these proposals. I think later in her life she truly regretted it because she was lonely and she always was extremely romantic. She wrote romantic poetry, and in this poetry you can see that she really yearned for a good relationship and for romantic life. We know that her most famous book appeared in 1862 when Christina Rossetti was 32 years old. The book was called The Goblin Market and Other Poems, and this book made Christina Rossetti quite famous. But in fact, her first book of verse was published when she was only 17 years old, and it was called simply Verses. Unfortunately, it did not receive any attention, so that's why it's not often mentioned. So Rossetti's influence was very, very diverse. She wrote sonnets and ballads and Christmas carols and lyrics and narrative poems, so she was extremely prolific. When all her poems were published in a bulk, the book had over 1,000 pages. But unfortunately, at the age of 42, Christina Rossetti was diagnosed with a Graves' disease. It is a thyroid condition. It changes your appearance. She used to be extremely pretty in her youth, but in her 40s, her appearance changed. Her eyes were bulging, she gained weight, and she was not looking that well, which also contributed to her social anxiety. And later, she was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1892, and on December 29, 1894, Christina Rossetti passed away. She was buried in North London. She was 64 years old. And so usually I read to you a quote by a famous poet, and I chose a quote that I really liked. It says, "Better by far you should forget and smile than you should remember and be sad." Because many times the bitter memories of the past causes us sadness and depression. So we need to leave the past behind and look to the future and think only of good things. And I'll read to you her love poem, which is called Echo. And it's kind of melancholy poem because it says that she doesn't have a romantic life, or she doesn't have any love in her life, but she wishes she would, and so she wants the dreams of love to come to her when she is asleep. So I feel that this poem is really, really beautiful, and I'll read it to you now. Come to me in the silence of the night. Come in the speaking silence of a dream. Come with soft, rounded cheeks and eyes as bright as sunlight on a stream. Come back in tears, O memory, hope, love of finished years. O dream, how sweet, too bittersweet, whose waking should have been in paradise, where souls brimful of love abide and meet, where thirsting, longing eyes watch the slow door that opening, letting in, lets out no more. Yet come to me in dreams that I may live my very life again, though cold in death. Come back to me in dreams that I may give pulse for pulse, breath for breath. Speak low, lean low, as long ago, my love. How long? ago. Oh my God, beautiful poem, love it. And in our next segment, we will discuss an American poet, also actually Victorian era. She was born in 1850 and her name is Ella Wheeler Wilcox. And she wrote an absolutely beautiful, beautiful poem about love that I cannot wait to read to you. Thank you so much for visiting my channel. Please come and visit us again to listen to more wonderful stories about poets and their love poems. Thank you very much. Please don't forget to like and to subscribe. Your support is extremely appreciated. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.